Can everyone hear me all right? Cool. By the way, Kia came up with the title, not me. But I quite like it, From the Cobbler's Car. Sounds a bit kind of too Yorkshire for me, though. Everyone assumes people in Yorkshire, we all have cobbled streets and have just got gas and electricity, you know. But actually, I warmed up to it. But so yeah, I'm Dan. I run an e-commerce agency called Statement. We're based in Wakefield and Leeds. So up north, we do have gas and electricity now. And yeah, we've had a real focus on multi-channel, and that will kind of become apparent throughout the talk. And it kind of became obvious that Shopify was a real kind of key partner for us in terms of helping us to enable our clients to kind of benefit from multi-channel. What I'm going to be talking about today is a really specific part of commerce, which is around independent retail. So I think traditionally Shopify is, you know, naturally associated with online merchants, and it's a fantastic platform for people looking to set up an online business. But actually, most retail isn't online retail, and there's this massive, huge kind of network of traditional retail shops, businesses that have been on our high streets for decades. And actually, the world is changing, and we want those businesses to be part of the change as well. So this kind of talk is going to talk a little bit about what we're doing, tiny little part of what we're doing to try and incorporate multi-channel into some of the traditional retail out there. So kind of what I'll be talking about is our journey, why Statement exists, and my own personal retail origins, why I think independent retail matters, and how retail's changing. A lot of this may be quite obvious to you, but I think it's always quite important to kind of set the scene and set the context. Then moving on to talk about Shopify and multi-channel, and how Shopify's multi-channel approach really kind of drives our solution, and why Shopify is such an obvious fit for what we're trying to do. How we're going to market as well, and how we're reaching our audience. So I think that was picked up by quite a few of the talks earlier today. You know, there are different types of marketing that you need to do according to the needs of your audience, and I'll be sharing some of the things we've done to go to market and to kind of reach this kind of group of independent retailers. Of course, what we've learned and what we're doing next, and then finally a bit of a call to action. Kind of, I want you to be part of the revolution, and how you as partners within Shopify can actually be part of this as well. Can you still hear me okay? Yeah, cool. So, Statement. Well, I was speaking to someone on my table earlier, and we kind of use the same phrase, a solution to a problem. So I never wanted to run an agency. Oh, this has been filmed, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, I never woke up one day and said, I want to run an agency. It didn't happen like that. Statement was created as a solution to a problem we had. Essentially, I was running an e-commerce business, and we were going through a really kind of key growth period, but there'd been quite a lot of change out there. Kind of mid-2000s, a huge kind of growth of Google. We started to have more competition. We'd been online for about 5 years, but we're really feeling that we weren't growing as fast as we'd like. So we'd been hiring external agencies at the time, and just had some really kind of not bad, but not outstanding experiences. You okay? Is there a problem with the mic? I'm loud enough, probably don't even need the mic. So yeah, we've gone through this process of using external agencies and just not had very good results. And I sat down with my colleagues and said, thank you. What do we need to do? Is it on? Is it on? Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Testing. Hello.
Right. Cool. Yeah. So what essentially we sat down and said, what is it that we need to do to kind of propel the growth of this e-commerce business? And we decided the only way we could really take control, having had some really bad experiences with other agencies, was to set up our own internal team. And it worked. It really did work. We had the control and the resources to really be able to scale the business at a much faster rate. But it had a bit of a side effect that we weren't expecting, in that people heard that I had these people locked in a room downstairs in the building, and were kind of coming to me and saying, you couldn't get your guys to kind of help me finish up this project, could you? And a bit like the guys at We Make Websites, we kind of started taking on work, but taking on almost any work, to be honest, in order to kind of help us to fund the cost of this development team. And then it became obvious that there was a bit of a gap in the market, that the problem we'd experienced of finding agencies that didn't really understand service and simple things like emailing you back within a day, you know, those kind of not too unreasonable things to expect. So we spun Statement out as a spin-off company. And then I kind of found myself in this quite interesting kind of dilemma where it was great that the e-commerce business was growing, but also I'd kind of started an agency, and that needed a lot of time and attention, and clients need help and meetings and all those things. And of course then there was another problem in that I couldn't possibly run two businesses. So I made the tough decision to exit the e-commerce business, and kind of sold my shares there. And then I was kind of out on my own with my team, and Statement was standing on its own 2 feet. And I think probably the best decision I ever made, one of the hardest decisions ever, because leaving a business you've kind of been a key part of and grown is tough, but I think you absolutely need to have a clear goal and a clear focus, and that's what drove that. So that's how Statement came to be. But personally, why is retail important? Well, here's a nice kind of tapestry of pictures, not the most artistic as you can see, which it kind of seems a bit inevitable that I'd end up in retail, really, because it's all I've known. So the top left picture is a picture of my grandfather's bakery business that was founded in 1885. And I remember delivering bread and cakes to pensioners when I was about 10 years old in kind of weekends and school holidays. And that business it's still going, it's still strong. It's quite a simple business, you know. Take some raw ingredients, make it into bread, and that's it really. But it's still growing, and people like it because it's really good quality products. And when everyone was kind of predicting local bakeries would shut when the supermarkets took over, actually the bread's better. So they've still grown and thrived, which is great. And then the top right is the e-commerce business I was talking about. So not the most exciting product in the world, but I was trying to think last night. It's my dad's company now. And I think we've probably shipped over 1 million light bulbs in the last 15 years. I was trying to work out some numbers. So it's like, light bulbs are not the most exciting product in the world, but we had a product that you couldn't get everywhere and that people wanted because they're really good light bulbs. If you're into your cars, I'll talk to you about it if you're really, really interested. Most people know. But yeah, we found a niche market, and we built a brand, and we built a really strong reputation. And actually, it's worked, and it's growing, and it's continuing to grow. And then the bottom right is furniture. So my mum, when I was about 12, decided to open a furniture shop. And then I spent most of my teens in the evenings going to auction houses and buying furniture with my mum. And do you remember, like, before eBay, when you couldn't have, you know, you looked in the back of the local newspaper and there were the little classified listings. So there was no picture, and it used to say, you know, for sale, antique sideboard. That was it. And you had to drive about 20 miles to have a look at this sideboard, and usually it'd be kind of like all the doors falling off, and you'd have wasted all that time. Think about how easy it is now with Gumtree and eBay. You can see instantly what a product's like. So yeah, I kind of spent a lot of time in retail. And then the last one is anyone who's French will, or maybe not even French, but would know La Redoute. So La Redoute were a huge French retail company. And when I was 16, I was a bit rebellious, and I was working for my dad at the time, part-time. And there was a massive call centre in my town, and it employed about 800 people, and it was La Redoute who owned it. And I thought, I want to see what it's like to work in a big company. And my dad said, you'll last 2 weeks. You'll last 2 weeks. You won't want to work in a call centre. And I was 15, applied, I'd just finished my GCSEs, applied for a job, I thought, for the summer, earn some cash. Started on my 16th birthday, fact, £3.64 an hour. And I spent 8 hours on the phones dealing with people who hadn't received their orders and didn't like something. It was just, but actually what it taught me was the principles of service and how important it is to look after the customer, and even when they're really, really not happy, just to have that patience and to find a solution. And I actually enjoyed it. It was kind of, I enjoyed what it was like to work in a bigger brand, and I enjoyed interacting with customers. I didn't enjoy speaking with people on Christmas Eve who were complaining that they hadn't received their little boy's bicycle when they ordered it the day before. And this was a time before the delivery we have now, and it wasn't uncommon for items to take 3 to 4 weeks at that time. Can you imagine that, waiting 3 to 4 weeks for something now? I used to take orders on the phone and say, oh, that item's going to be about 5 to 6 weeks, madam, is that okay? Oh, yeah, not a problem. If you say 5 to 6 days now, people have like a fit, don't they? So it was a really, really different time, but it kind of seems obvious that I'd end up in retail. And so that kind of takes me to independent retail. So independent retail matters to me because I've got parents and grandparents who are all independent retailers. And I think actually what's really important is that independent retailers it's kind of what I call the soul of a place. So if you go to Bristol's kind of renowned for its really good independent retail, good coffee shops, good bars. If you imagine taking independent retail out of a place, what have you got? You've got kind of a clone town. You've got like a row of the same shops you can get everywhere. So I think people forget that independent retail, if you didn't have it, then it would really affect the character and the personality of where you live. And I kind of think, it's the antidote to the clone town, really. But independent retail is going through some major challenges at the moment. So we do live in changing times, and I think we've talked a lot about change today, and I think it's quite easy to almost forget that in the digital world, change is just how it is. We accept change. We deal with change every single day. Shopify will change something. We deal with it. Google will change its algorithm. We deal with it. We are absolutely pre-programmed to deal with change and be very, very good at adapting because it's all we've ever known. You take a business that's been on the high street for 40 years. Actually, it's not had to deal with that much change. It's been on a high street. It's had footfall. It's had people go in the shop. It's had people leave the shop. They buy stock, they sell stock. Actually, the fundamental process of running a shop hasn't really changed that much. Yes, they've had threats. Yes, they've had things that they've had to consider. But fundamentally, the business model of my granddad's bakery shop in 1885 is not that different today. However, most of, I suppose, the difference with food is that everyone needs to eat. So that's kind of why it's not needed to adapt. But if you're selling clothing or you're selling gifts or homewares and you're an independent retailer, you're facing more threats today than you probably did in living memory, really. And actually what's contributing to that are these kind of things here. So we've got the rise of the out-of-town development. So, of course, we've got big shopping centres. So up north, where I'm from, we've got Meadowhall, or Meadowhell as some people call it. Just submitted plans for a £300 million extension. You've got places like up in the northeast, like Metro Centre. You've got huge, big out-of-town developments. And aside from the shopping mall, you've got the retail park. Actually, there's a growth in retail park development at the moment because consumers like the fact they can rock up, park for free, get a Costa, do a bit of shopping, get back in the car. I know myself now, having kids, you have to consider the logistics of the buggy. It takes you a long time. So these places are appealing. We're giving customers what they want, apparently, and it's working. But actually what we're doing at that time is diverting people out of where they used to shop, where they traditionally used to shop in terms of town centres. You've also got, bottom right, the rise of what I call the destination shopping. So if you look at Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester, Bristol, London, big cities are actually growing and are thriving. They're attracting new inward investment, and big brands are actually spending a lot of money establishing major flagship stores within key destinations. If you want to go into Leeds and park for a day, it'll cost you £20, but people pay it because what they're getting is something they can't get in perhaps one of the small local towns that's near to them. So destination shopping is absolutely growing. But of course, what impact does that have on your provincial towns? What impact does that have on the towns around that destination? And what's happening to the shops there and the high streets in that place? And of course, you've got online, which is naturally close to everyone's heart here. And I'm always really, really critical of retail commentators who blame the internet on the changing state of the high street. Absolutely, online retail has its part to play, but it's not a direct cause and effect. It's a much more complex issue than that. But actually, we have got things like Amazon Prime Now. Has everyone heard of Amazon Prime Now? Anyone used? Hands up if you've used it. So anyone not know what Amazon Prime Now is? Cool. So you can get stuff delivered in 2 hours now by Amazon, 10,000 products. And I always used to kind of say to people, well, it's okay, because the one thing Amazon cannot do is immediacy. They can't, if you need something, that's why they'll go in your shop, because you've got it on the shop and they need it, and now, Amazon can deliver it in 1 to 2 hours. So actually, can you imagine being an independent retailer, having a business for 20 years and having all this going on? This is really, really overwhelming. This is big stuff to think about, big stuff to deal with. And actually, a lot of independent retailers don't have a team of really cool, clever, kind of tech people in the background. It's usually them, working 6-7 days a week, long hours, usually for not too much, cash. But they do it because they enjoy what they're doing, just like we all enjoy what we're doing. So, really, we did some research. It wasn't kind of like Maury level research, but we did a good bit of research and some surveys, and within the towns where we're based, we kind of identified that almost 100% of the national retailers do multi-channel. You could go on a website, you can see if something's in stock, you can pick it up, and most consumers now expect that. Argos have been doing this for 20 years, it's nothing new, but actually most consumers expect to be able to see if something's in stock and then maybe reserve it or get it delivered to them. When we did the same research on independents, only 5% of independents were offering multi-channel. And this was in some affluent towns like Harrogate, where you have some really, really good quality places, some really good retail outlets. So there's a huge gulf between what the nationals and what the independents are doing. And that kind of got us thinking, and that got me talking, and looking at, well, how can we play our part to try and change this? And so really that's kind of what we've been doing with this project, is how can we enable multi-channel for independents? How can we use all of the great knowledge and all of the great connections and all of the great technology we've got to try and make a difference for our independent retailers? And I suppose one interesting question is, well, why? Why do it? Because actually there are probably easier challenges, in all honesty. There are probably lots and lots of other opportunities. So I think why? Well, for all the reasons I've mentioned, really. I think on a personal level, I think independent retail matters. I think it matters to us as individuals, to our communities, to our places. And actually, wouldn't it be a real shame if independent retail just disappeared? And what would we be left with? Do we want every shop on our high street to be converted into a coffee shop, a bar, or an apartment? Because actually, if we're not careful, that might happen. So I think it matters because it's about places and communities as well. But I think what I want to do, and what we've been trying to do at Statement, is to kind of help independents, to steer them through the stormy waters and to give them some help and some advice. And that really has informed the way in which we've positioned this and talked about this and engaged with independent retailers, which certainly has been a journey for us and has certainly been different than how we've perhaps explored engaging with your more conventional Shopify merchant as well. And of course, Shopify were the obvious partner because I think they get it. They actually, Kia's already talked about it not being e-commerce, but commerce, and about enabling commerce and making it easy. And you give someone Shopify's POS app who's maybe never used a traditional till, and they get it quite quickly. And I don't know if anyone's ever used any Windows-based EPOS systems, but you kind of want to kick them because they take about a week to load and they go out of date and they're expensive and they're horrible to use. And actually, that's not what EPOS should be about. It should be easy and it should be as kind of enjoyable as possible. And for us, Shopify's technology, it absolutely fits in with, I think, the needs of the independent merchant as well. So what did we do? Well, we looked to try and find a solution. Most independents hadn't heard Shopify that we spoke to, or they had heard of it, but they just thought it was an online store, and then they kind of thought, well, I don't want to run a separate online store. So we had to kind of go through a kind of a process of educating people, really. And what we wanted to do is to introduce them to Shopify and to the POS and to make it as easy as possible, to make it accessible and to help them. One of the big things that people said to us, they said, well, I think it's too expensive and it's too kind of complex. So we said, okay, well, let's give you a payment plan. Let's spread the cost for you. So that was that box ticked. And then they said, well, I think it's going to be really long-winded and complex, and said, right, well, let's do it in 6 to 8 weeks. We can do this. It's a process for us. We can run this out and we can enable it for you within 8 weeks. And that made a big difference as well. And then it was about kind of saying, well, making sure that they didn't feel that they couldn't ask us questions as well, and being accessible and actually talking to people. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about this when we go on to the next slide. Now, there is a video, but there's no audio. So I'm going to skip it, actually, because you don't want me kind of wittering over the video. So unfortunately, I don't have the video. But basically, the video kind of shows you how we presented that concept. And we could send that video, 90-second video, to people. And even if they were reading it on their iPhone, after they finished the, kind of working in the shop at 7 o'clock at night, they could get in 90 seconds what we were trying to say to them. And it's all about really just quite simply saying, look, your customers now are shopping in different ways. They are researching on their mobiles. They're looking at weekends. They're not just going to shop 9 to 5 like they used to do. So actually, you need the ability to be able to trade 24/7, to be able to reach customers in the way that they want to shop. And also, you need to be running one system, because you don't want a website on one platform and an EPOS solution on another. You need something unified, and that's where we believe Shopify with the POS actually makes all the difference. So what we offered our clients is a bundled solution. We design a website, we'll install the POS, we'll even buy all the hardware if you want us to do it, and we'll train you and set it up and just make it as simple as possible. And that's what we've done. So reaching the audience, again, I think different needs, because we found very, very different levels of engagement with independent retailers compared to, say, online merchants. So our background has been traditionally working with online retailers based all over the place who were very, very comfortable talking about digital and web, and you'd email them and they'd email you back in 3 minutes. Whereas we identified that a lot of independent retailers didn't always use email. They might prefer Facebook messages. They might get back to you sometimes, they might not. But actually what we did was recognise quite early on that we needed to engage in a more personal way. So we organised kind of mini seminars and meetups and actually provided people with the opportunity to demo equipment and actually have a play and really kind of see how simple it was to use in a kind of a safe environment. We also went and saw people, which meant going around towns and cities and actually meeting people, actually talking to them, finding out about their business and trying to build relationships that way, which, as you can imagine, is a really, really different and more time-consuming process in many respects than some of the other marketing channels and routes to market that have been talked about today as well. So I think what I found really that underpinned the psyche of the independent retailer today is confidence. I think we are living in changing times, and there's a natural worry about that change. And I think part of it was trying to create a space where we could have an honest conversation and help independent retailers as well, and kind of say, look, it's okay if you don't know what to do, because that's why we're having this conversation. You don't need to know all the answers. And part of it is just building trust and building relationships. so that we could actually start to talk about, well, imagine what you could do if you had a POS in there and you could actually have a day off because someone else could run the shop because you don't need them to know all the prices, and you could actually take a holiday and keep an eye on your sales through the mobile app. And it was just kind of gradually providing the space to allow people to have those kind of conversations. So yeah, we kind of call it the shop of the past, which is my old till that I bought on eBay, which you actually need like a manual to use. It's just you press buttons and it just kind of does stuff. It's weird. And then of course the shop of the future, which is iPad driven, uses fantastic hardware, links in with the wonderful card reader, which thank you for bringing the card reader to the UK because it's lovely. So yeah, I think what Kia asked me to do was to kind of have some critical reflection, and I'm a big believer in that. I think you've got to try new things, and you know this was is an ambitious project. You know, there's this huge gulf between the nationals and independents, so naturally we're going to have some things that we need to reflect on to inform what we do moving forward. I think the first thing is we've had some really amazing feedback from retail professionals across the country really. We've been to conferences which have had, you know, kind of town and city centre managers there, and we've introduced this and spoken at industry events, and we've got so many people in the audience who have nodded and gone, oh my God, we really need this on our high streets. So the feedback, I think, from the place managers and the people who are responsible for these towns and cities is overwhelmingly really positive, and they recognise that independent retailers need to do this. I think the first learning is that it's a big change for most retailers, and I think we were guilty of maybe underestimating the gravity of this change, being so used to the digital world and so kind of confident and happy with Shopify. We kind of didn't perhaps realise quite how much hand-holding independents would need in order to be able to kind of consider this change. And as a result, you just need to be there and accept that the buying cycle might be longer because people need that time to be able to really kind of make the right choice for them. The second thing is you need to see people. You can't do this by email. You can't do this by, you know, kind of webinars. It has to be a relationship, and it has to be a face-to-face kind of process. So yeah, you can do some of it digitally, but actually it is about people, and it's about going into the individual businesses and building those relationships, and that inevitably takes time and it takes money. Not all retailers will do it. You know, and I think this was probably the hardest one for me because I'm an optimist and I'm passionate about independent retail and I'm passionate about places and I'm passionate about Shopify, and I go in and I'm like, you need to do this, it's fantastic. And you know, in every single barrier we say, well, you know, we can do this, we can do that, and always looking for solutions, but actually there is a really harsh reality that some won't do it. And there are lots of reasons why they won't do it. And actually, I've kind of had to take that on the chin. I'm sad on a personal level because I think, oh my God, you imagine what we could do here. But actually, sometimes it's not going to happen. And you sow the seed, and if it's not going to happen, we've had to take that and move on. But thankfully, there are lots of retailers who have gone, yeah, we need to do this. We want some help. We want to talk. So kind of like takeaways and next steps for us. Well, I think what I'd like you guys to consider, I suppose, in terms of reflections, is that I think independent retail matters to everyone and every place. I think it's fantastic that we've got digital commerce, and it's fantastic we can buy products from anywhere in the world and get them delivered really quickly. No doubt everyone in this room has an Amazon account, and we all use Amazon and like Amazon, but I would kind of encourage you to think, well, what would my high street look like without that independent jeweler? And actually, if they're not doing multi-channel, are they at threat? There's a massive way to go to close the gap between large and independent multi-channel. You know, we live in, by Eric Schmidt's own kind of analysis, the most advanced e-commerce market in the world. You know, the UK is really good at commerce. Our national and international retailers really get what consumers want. They build great apps, they build great websites, but there is a huge gulf between what the big players are doing and what the independents are doing. And I think there's a real role here for Shopify and for you guys to help close that gap. And thirdly, that independent retailers may need different engagement opportunities compared to web-only merchants. Web-only merchants are more confident. They kind of get this new multi-channel economy, and I think have already got a certain degree of knowledge. That's not always the case with a traditional business, and part of it is adapting how you communicate and engage with these customers to make sure that they feel comfortable and happy and confident, and they can start to open up and explore the opportunities. So what is our future? Not necessarily everyone's cup of tea in terms of newspaper, but the Daily Mail posted this article just a few days ago, which was that they reckon AI assistants could replace high street shopping by 2050. And you know, we always get these articles out there. It's very, you know, kind of topical to kind of put these predictions for the future. But it does kind of pose a real question. You know, if we don't help independent retailers adapt, then what will the high street look like in the future? We know we've got an oversupply of retail space in most towns now. That's, you know, that's a fact. If you go in most towns, you walk down the shop, and you'll see, you know, walk down the street, you'll see some empty shops, you know, and that happens everywhere. By the way, everyone thinks their town is always the worst, you know, and it is, it's true. I learnt this kind of, every town you go and speak to locals, oh, this town's going downhill. Everyone always says it. The locals always think their town's the worst, but actually it's a problem that is across the whole country, unless you're in a major destination. So if you kind of care about where you're from and your local place, then is there an opportunity for you to use your knowledge, your passion for Shopify, your passion for commerce to make a difference on the ground and to help some of these businesses evolve and respond to this new reality? And I suppose that's my call to action, that if you feel that this is something that is close to your heart and you kind of have a passion for your local community, and you feel that this might affect them, then I think it's a perfect opportunity to use your knowledge and passion for commerce and Shopify and help to make a little difference where you live as well. And that's me. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you found it useful, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.